Welcome to your first day on the job. This is your very own autopilot ship, where you will eat and sleep for the duration of your contract. Make yourself at home. To complete the onboarding process, you will want to check the instruction manual and sign into your ship's computer terminal. We trust you will be a great asset to the company. Great asset to the company. Great asset to the company. Great asset.
This is Lethal Company. As an employee, you are tasked with collecting valuable salvage from the several abandoned stations dotted upon various moons within your ship's reach. Within 3 days, you must meet a specified profit quota, detailed above your ship's main console. Each day should be spent visiting moons until the final day, in which you'll sell all your scrap to your strange and, quite frankly, unnerving employers. Each 3-day period after selling progressively asks more and more of you, ever increasing the quota and the variety of places you'll visit and plunder. And one thing's for certain, you don't want to miss the quota. As a company member, you have access to a special terminal on an autopilot ship. This space acts as a sort of hub area that you can recuperate and plan your next actions with either yourself or your team. The first thing you'll want to get familiar with is your terminal and in-helmet scanner, detailed through your safety manual, placed on the desk of your main console. The scanner can be activated with a right click and will essentially scan the area within your cone of vision. This will highlight objects of interest like scrap or tools, various creatures, and access points like doors. Scanning objects will tell you their value to the company in credits, the currency you'll become familiar with handling and acquiring throughout your playtime. Scanning creatures will identify them and add them to your bestiary log, accessible from your ship's terminal. The terminal itself is a hub for your storage, bestiary, moon autopilot navigation, and a neat little shop for tools that you can use on your excursions. To access them, just type into the terminal and go to the page that you desire. To use the store, type the item and the quantity you desire and type confirm. To navigate to a moon, it's the same premise. You'll learn how to use it efficiently and extensively if you wish to survive past the first profit quota. There are a plethora of tools for survival, including flashlights, blunt force weaponry, lockpicks, and other doodads I have yet to purchase for myself and use. Trial and error in this case is your best friend. Carrying too many tools for an excursion could prove you and your team's undoing. One thing that you shouldn't neglect is the best tool for the job, and that is the man in the chair. Dedicated to whoever doesn't wish to venture outward into the abandoned stations. They have access to the facility's camera system and can track all other employees. One other amazing benefit is their access to secure doors dotted around each facility, allowing entry to otherwise possibly inaccessible places. There are 4 different types of moons we can access, each with differing levels of difficulty, local fauna and flora, and hazard level. One thing about them all, however, is their randomly generated facility layout. You'll be given one of possibly 2 different versions of the outside area, with a completely new facility inside the access points. They can all have random weather events that will affect you and your team's ability to make it back to your home ship alive. These include flooded. Rising water levels put you and your team on a timer to locate valuable salvage. The outside will slowly flood as time ticks by. Act quickly if you don't want to meet a waterlogged end. Stormy. A thunderous storm will rage on outside, and it's particularly fond of static energy generation and all the metal that you might have on hand. If you hear sparks, it's best you drop anything that might act as a potent lightning rod. Rainy. One might think rain to be entirely harmless, but I'd like to turn your attention to the ground. If you suddenly notice yourself or another crewmate is suddenly far shorter than usual, it might be best to steer clear of the muddy terrain. Foggy. Exactly what it says on the tin. Drastically reduces visibility outside the facility. You might want to be careful if you hear anything stomping around beyond the veil. Eclipsed. Last, but certainly not least, a dark and eternal night has befallen the land outside. And if you know anything about nighttime on moons, you'll want to find your way to the facility with a lot more caution than usual upon landing. All facilities contain a fire exit or 2, allowing you quick and easy exit if you're too deep into your venture. especially useful for getting all that useful scrap back home as soon as humanly possible. The layout of the inside is not conducive to the structure on the outside, so don't expect to head one way to find a fire exit or main entrance on the inside through external knowledge. It really won't ever make any sense. Now, in regards to hazard levels, I'm unsure if it really changes all too much about your experience when you're presented with the hazard level upon landing, but it's reason enough to instill a little bit of caution and fear within the hearts of you and your team. There is certainly a harder, far more rewarding set of moons you'll encounter later on into your ventures. However, these ones will cost you and your team valuable credits that you'll use to decorate, upgrade, and acquire new tools for the job. Oh, and one more thing. Don't take too long on your excursions. The ship is programmed to automatically vacate the area at midnight in order to minimize possible damage and/or loss of valuable company hardware. All of these moons function similarly to one another. I mainly say this in regards to the fauna that spawns here and the type of facility it houses. These places will be your first foray into exploration, and these locales will become all too familiar with playtime and experience. They're all accessible from the beginning and cost no money to visit, unlike the 3 other moons we will explore later. These are certainly the least difficult spaces to explore, save for the random event generation that could see you facing up against the most awful of critters and creepy crawlies. The other moons here are all similar to one another, with one glaring difference to the previously free to explore moons: the facility, or more rather, the interior. Now that you are somewhat familiar with the company's secrets, it's about time I take off this hazard suit and begin talking about something far more important: Lethal Company's absolute takeover of the online gaming sphere. Within this video, I will be discussing as best as I possibly can the systems that are the genetic makeup of Lethal Company's glaring success. My name's Seal. Sit back, grab a snack, because it's time that we talk about a brilliant example of cooperative terror. One thing Lethal Company gets entirely right is its impeccably simplistic art design. Most gamers never really realise that graphical quality is not an essential margin that games must meet. You've probably noticed a lack of polygons in my displays, and if this turns off your interest, then I'd implore you to reconsider. We have reached a state in the video game market where graphical improvements have plateaued, and art stylization takes the forefront. You can have lovely graphical fidelity and still fail to deliver something visually striking if you don't employ techniques regarding lighting, level design choices, and its congruence with character designs. Watch Why Good Graphics Don't Matter by NovemberHotel on YouTube, or a plethora of other studies on the platform which explore the same ideas, which discuss why good graphics can fail to deliver an aesthetically pleasing experience if not properly integrated within the design choices of the game. Lethal Company houses an expansive cast of creatures and locations, including items and tools alike. They're all extremely recognizable and have distinct designs for the player to take in and understand. In a knowledge-based game like Lethal Company, where experience and understanding gives players more opportunity to survive their encounters, it is absolutely key to have these items, tools, and creatures congregate into a batch of easily recognizable entities that allow for such gameplay experiences to become more efficiently handled and rewarding the player with gratification for their applications of knowledge. Lethal Company has and will not take itself too seriously, hence its design choices. All entities in the game, both players and non-player characters, have rather simplistic movements and an incomplex series of polygons. It can look extremely, for lack of a better word, goofy when playing, but never fails to deliver a satisfying horror experience each and every time. These design choices coincide deeply with another of Lethal Company's many expansive and potentially built upon strengths. The game is built to be enjoyed with up to 3 extra players, with the lobby capped to 4 people total by the developer. The whole game revolves around communal, communicative gameplay. You should be working together to find scrap, delegating roles within your group, and sharing information that can keep you and your team safe. Working towards the same goal and not against one another competitively in the objective sense allows us as players to share experiences with friends and work towards a common goal. This is the basis for all cooperative game experiences. Not only this, but your ensuing terror is shared, and these emotions are distributed evenly amongst even the most experienced members of your team. Lethal Company banks on this shared experience. It's so addictive as you share triumph in survival and acquisition of scrap, and also the horrors of facing new and challenging creatures who all have different ways of being handled by the player. There is good credence as to why this formula of horror is so effective, that Gaut talks about in 1993, The Paradox of Horror, from the British Journal of Aesthetics, which talks about the obsession with curiosity and learning in the face of something so unpleasant, using horror as the main focus. Gaut states, "We all can approach this paradox by reflecting on the following statements, all of which seem to be true. Number 1, some of us enjoy horror fictions. Number 2, horror fictions characteristically produce fear and disgust in their audience. And number 3, fear and disgust are intrinsically unpleasant emotions. The most straightforward explanation of these facts seems to be that we enjoy the fear and disgust the fictions produce in us. But to assert this yields the apparently paradoxical view that we enjoy intrinsically unpleasant emotions. So the paradox of horror rests on what might be termed the paradox of enjoyment of negative emotions. However, there is another explanation of the phenomena available. We are enjoying not negative emotions, but rather some other feature of the situation, such as the curiosity we feel about what is going to happen. Gaut believes that we enjoy other aspects that spawn from horror films and media. Lethal Company is utterly terrifying despite its cartoonish design, all accomplished through atmospheric production and other elements that we will explore later on in the video. No one truly enjoys being scared. It's an awful thing, but time and time again we have proved through media online such as horror games, Let's Players like Markiplier, Jacksepticeye and other mediums such as streaming or films that they are incredibly successful in sparking interest or joy. Gaut also references Noel Carrol in The Philosophy of Honor or Paradoxes of the Heart from the New York Routledge, who explains why we find horror so fascinating. Carrol provides a cognitivist solution to the paradox of horror. Drawing on the work of anthropologist Mary Douglas, he argues that monsters such as werewolves or a man with a fly's head are violations of categorical themes. Douglas argues that such violations are seen as threatening and impure, and this is Carrol's explanation of why works of horror generate fear and disgust. But because monsters are categorical violations, being physically impossible according to our conceptual scheme, we are also curious about them and find them fascinating. Lethal Company has a story with a complete air of mystery surrounding it. Its full focus remains on the cooperative design and being a fun game to play with friends. You aren't really told much about the monsters that you encounter, other than a brief description in the bestiary, nor really provided with any information until you encounter the horrors you'll be facing anyway. The curiosity stems from your desires to conquer and possibly overcome these conditions set upon you, or to further understand them. Take the Left 4 Dead series for example. Created by Valve, known for critically acclaimed games such as Portal and Half-Life, and the subsequent games after the fact. The game Left 4 Dead 1 revolves around a linear experience, in which teammates are forced to work together to solve problems and make it through the level, in the most basic of explanations. Add in random generation of some variety to spark curiosity within the players replaying levels, whether it be through a complex rigging of an AI director or roguelike level generation alongside item and creature spawning, and you create a memorable experience for all members of your party. This distribution of emotion through cooperation is what Lethal Company is so good at replicating with its focus on horror. Development of strategies to deal with tasks also leads into coinciding with the roguelike iteration that Lethal Company inhabits. This formula was rewritten countless times to somewhat decent success in a plethora of other team-based games, but if we were to steal the faculties that make those games such memorable and engaging media, then we can create a recipe for cooperative experiences that can continuously re-engage the player and keep them coming back for more. Lethal Company is a roguelite experience. Unlike most games with a save mechanic, your progress can be lost should you fail certain tasks or objectives. In Lethal Company's case, it would be meeting the quota within the deadline. Although you are punished extremely for losing your whole team on an expedition, resulting in the loss of all scrap and treasure, you can still bounce back if you have any other days to use for searching for more goods to sell to the company. Like most roguelikes, if you meet the fail conditions, you will lose all of your progress and be sent all the way back to the beginning. The save function here is all stored within your mind, essentially being the way that you approach the game next time round, all being based around what might have happened to your poor little employee the last time. Though the design is punishing, it pushes players to actively seek danger in expeditions and reach their quota markers despite how bleak their situations may be. The intriguing feedback loop it creates isn't all lost when a save file is reset, however, as the experience the player has within the systems and enemies is all residual and reusable. You'll slowly adapt and develop efficient strategies to essentially nullify any sort of progress loss you had made in the next life. Lethal Company enhances and encourages this gameplay loop and is intentionally a punishing experience to build player resistance and knowledge to overcome their shortcomings and previous failures. It's designed to be iterative and built upon, which only becomes more engaging when you realise the game is live service, like most modern titles today, consistently set to receive updates and changes through its lifespan, essentially meaning that a possibly endless stream of updates could enhance this experience even further, giving it the potential to be one of the best examples of cooperative horror. Lethal Company also has a vice grip on the fundamentals of sound design, as a majority of its gameplay is audio focused. It's recommended to play outside of a group chat app like Discord in order to engage correctly within the game's proximity-oriented in-game mic functions. The game urges you to use the system in place to communicate, that being direct contact with fellow players, or even the use of walkie-talkies to communicate over long distances, like between the ship's camera operator and the expedition goers. Marc Grimshaw discusses the importance of video game sound in Sound, the Routledge companion to video game studies, from 2014. In the theoretical considerations and empirical evidence section of the chapter, Grimshaw states, video game sound performs many functions, but all relate in some fashion to the player of the game. Sound, together with image, plot, narrative, and other social activities surrounding the game, helps the player to engage with the accordances offered by the game's software and hardware, and thus to take part in the game world itself, essentially stating that sound is intrinsically an act of engaging the player and immersing them within the game world. Lethal Company has a great deal of focus on its sound design, and even incorporates the sound projected both by players and monsters to keep you aware and thoughtful of the world around you. The sound and audio cues from the map are also easily recognizable and fit into this scope of keeping the audio entirely experience driven, whether it be the stomps of larger monsters or even the opening of a vent in a not so distant room far away from yourself. All of these noises meeting the player's ears elicit feelings of fear and uncertainty, creating the horribly mysterious atmosphere that Lethal Company thrives upon. When building upon a system that relies on sound, not only do you create an interesting game mechanic for the player to interact with, but also an interesting tool for them to make use of. For example, taking a page out of modern horror films like Don't Breathe and A Quiet Place, where the main threat of the film relies heavily on sound-oriented cues to hunt the protagonist down, Lethal Company uses this with a few of its monsters also. Certain in-game creatures can actually hear your in-game mic as it's projected across the environment. This means screams, chatter, and other sounds that you create vocally aren't only picked up by your friends, but monsters too, leading to tense situations like these ones.
Over here, Spinny. Come and take a bite. Hello. Oh my.
Dave, he's looking at you.
Sign you up. He collected it though. Push.
He's inside!
He's inside?
No,
what do you mean he's
stuck
inside?
down there. Oh,
he's in the quicksand.
He's inside!
The active double-edged nature of something so intrinsically relied upon by players is effective at creating sequences through keeping the player on their toes at all times, constantly thinking or believing the next threat could be right around the corner, even within the comfort of your hub ship. With its technical mastery aside, what makes Lethal Company any better than other games on the market for cooperative horror? Through its design and the game's ability to randomly generate sequences of layouts and monster spawn locations, it has incredible replay value. Not just because of the intensity of the system the player is placed up against and forced to survive within, but in reality, it's the brilliant storytelling the system can inhabit and catalyze. I'm going to use a clip from one of my streams as an example, but a great deal of these movie-like moments have been popping up in clips all over YouTube and other platforms alike.
There's another piece of loot in that room. You're right.
Hairbrush. I can't grab it though, I need to drop off some stuff.
That's fine.
Door!
He's He's coming. Features line there. If I keep going.
Is he gone? Is he gone?
Yes. Okay, there's...
You see, that is the essence of Lethal Company's gameplay loop. It possesses the ability to tell stories and more commonly transform you and your friends into real employees exploring these desolate moons with nothing but survival and money on your mind. You'll want to keep coming back to these places time and time again to see if things could go differently for yourself and your team. By taking the focus on sound, communication, cooperation, and experience-based wisdom to churn through a roguelike lens, Lethal Company lends itself as an engaging and accessible cooperative horror, capable of birthing incredibly intense moments within its systems, coinciding to create a memorable and thoughtful piece of hilarious art in an extremely oversaturated market of indie horror titles. Again, my name's Seal, and thank you very much for watching.